Host Derek here. Host of Talking with Famous People. And man whose laptop no longer works. Yes, I'm going to have to get a new laptop today. It's true. Now, this is a terrible place to stream, but it's kind of the best I can do, I guess. And, yeah. So I got up at, 5 o'clock this morning or whatever. Went over to the house to feed the cats. But last night, Rachel and I were watching The Office on my laptop, and it just completely died. It was like, no, you push the power button and nothing happens. Which is suboptimal, you might say. A suboptimal reality for me. Nevertheless, I do still have my phone. Rachel's laptop, of course, is in the pod somewhere. So, I'm going to have to go buy a new laptop tonight. There's just no getting around it. I'm actually quite impressed with my laptop for surviving as long as it did under air conditions, which is to say, under the conditions of being owned by somebody who doesn't know how to take care of stuff. I'm also surprised my phone is up because T-Mobile Sprint has been telling me since like May that my phone no longer works. Even though it obviously does. They want me to switch SIM cards or upgrade my phone. They keep offering me free phones and stuff, But I can't remember my PIN number for my phone contract or whatever. So before I can replace this phone, I have to go to sprint.com and change my PIN number. Who knows when I'm going to get around to that. When I asked the representatives from the phone people, Sprint, T-Mobile, back in like May or June, when I asked them, they said, your phone will stop working in July. So naturally, what did I say? Good morning, Mrs. Mom. I said, okay, well, then that's when I will fix it. That's when I will repair the problem. I will do so when the phone stops working at the end of July. It is now January 2023, and my phone is still working. It's like if Sprint T-Mobile had called me and said, listen, we're trying to get all of you guys to switch over to our network, and we can't shut down the old network until all of you do, which is what I suspected is going on. I would have said, oh, well, okay, if you really need me to do that for you, I'll be happy to do that. But instead, of course, they lie to me. Why? Why does everybody want to lie to me all the time? Don't they know it's a bad idea? It is a bad idea to lie to me because now that I was once told that my phone would stop working in July, and it didn't stop working in July, well, now I'm never going to believe them when they say your phone's going to stop working, right? And also, I'm not very inclined to help them anymore because they lied to me. But, people love to lie to Eric for some reason. Even though I can hardly think of anybody in the world that's less of a good idea to lie to than me. I think it would be a bad idea to lie to you because if I did lie to you and you found out, you would immediately live stream and call me out. Yeah. Let's see if I can use this pillow to prop this up a little higher. In typical horrible TE fashion, I've got this little teeny cord that's plugged my phone into this wall outlet. I did find a place where you can't hear the background music. So that's good. That's progress. I should avoid any trouble with YouTube. Yesterday I did get a content claim on the background music. You have more influence over me concerning Hill than does Jess. I don't know what that means. I have no idea what that means. Let's see if I can arrange this a little bit. Oh, I see. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. I don't know what I just did. You're not a thief. Yeah, I grew up in a family of anti-theists. So I totally respect your anti-theism is equally legitimate to my theism. Boy, I tell you, there was one group of people my dad hated for some reason. It was Christians, of all people. He hated Christians. You'd read the paper and it'd something about Christians putting up a nativity scene in the park, and he'd fucking flip his lid. And of course, his sister is the most devout Christian in history. His sister Evelyn, who would always call him up and try to tell him to be saved by Jesus before he died, My Aunt Evelyn. But she's cool, and it's she seems to be using faith pretty effectively to deal with some incredibly difficult things in her life, Her adopted daughter, my cousin Julie, died of brain cancer this past year, and then her brother shot himself in the head, and, she's got a lot of difficult shit going on. And, she's vividly religious. She was so relieved when she discovered that I'm a Christian, And she made sure that I didn't just pray to God, I had to pray to Jesus too. Otherwise it doesn't count. So she doesn't quite get that I'm not her kind of Christian exactly. She doesn't really understand that I have a very unusual kind of Christianity because, like, I don't put any weight into the Bible, for example. Well, how can you be a Christian and not believe in the Bible, Eric? That's the beauty of faith. Hi, Boba Fett. How you doing this morning? You know, a lot of people would say you can't be a Christian and not believe in the Bible. But is your aunt the Michelle Way sort of Christian from the book of Paul, women remain home and men rule everything? No. No, she's not. She and her husband have a great relationship, and if anything, she's the boss of that relationship. But she's just really into Bible study classes and and worship and fellowship and all of that shit, you know. My aunt is almost certainly an ENFJ, but she might be an INFJ, one of the two. It's like, I remember when we visited them when I was like 14, back when we went to Virginia to visit my aunt and my uncle and my cousins, Brian and Julie. R.I.P. Julie. It's like, I didn't know anything about cognitive functions then, or personality type at all. But I somehow knew that my aunt was like me in some way, and that nobody else around me really was. I could tell she was intuitive. And I didn't know the term for it then, I didn't know what I was noticing, but I did note that she had this, like, brightness, awareness kind of thing going on. Where it was different than anybody else in my family, except me, you know. My mom was an ISFJ, a delightful woman, chatty, had lots of fun things to talk about, told lots of SI kind of stories, was a wonderful person. But she was not, and smart, and a good writer, and a lot of other things, but she was definitely not an intuitive. My dad continually baffled me as I was growing up because I didn't get why he didn't seem to know how to chat. Like, my mom and I would sit down and chat, and we'd have these great conversations and stuff, and my dad didn't seem to understand how to chat. I had an experience with someone, when I first found out the INFJ archetype, I thought back to them. How do you make that stay up longer? I just knew. I called her and officially confirmed she was an INFJ. Yeah, well, I think my aunt, I was under the impression that she was probably an ENFJ, but I'm kind of changing my opinion about it, having talked to her a lot more since my dad died than I did in the decades prior, you know. I suspect she is an INFJ. My Uncle Lonnie is almost certainly an ESFJ. Her name is Jody, and she looks like Rachel lives in New Jersey. There definitely does seem to be something um, to there being a correlation between physical appearance and type. You know, it's not strong enough to type people with it, but it is the case that like INFJs have certain physical similarities typically. ENFJs have certain physical similarities with each other typically. They're on the thicker side. They look like thicker INFJs, kind of, but their weight doesn't fluctuate nearly as much. INFJs can go up and down in weight like this, just like they. I've seen Corey do it. I've seen Rachel do it. It's crazy. They decide, I'm going to lose a bunch of weight now, and then they do. Body type theory dates back to ancient Greece. Ectomorph, mesomorph, endomorph. Yeah, well, I mean, there definitely are different types of bodies, right? Like my type of body, tall, skinny, very high metabolism, is a different type of body than Rachel's. She's petite and she's not chubby anymore, but it's because she decided to not be, and she just manages her portions, as she says. She'll order a meal and just like eat a few bites of it. And I don't care how she manages that. I do care that she looks fantastic, but she really looks fantastic these days. Because, man, let me tell you, that woman has got incredible fashion sense. She got packages. She gets packages like every day, pretty much. But the thing is, unlike my ex-wife Candace, she's not being a super big spendthrift. She looks at 1,000 things before she buys one. And then if she doesn't like it, she returns it. And so she's a very careful shopper, And she's got I was watching her try on some outfits last night. Man, that woman's got some fantastic fashion sense. She just looks like bam. And after watching her try on clothes, of course, I had to intercourse her with my penis. Rachel is glowing with happiness, and it shows that she looks fantastic every day. I love seeing which color of lipstick or what top or dress she's wearing. It's female fun for me. Yeah, well, I don't normally like to watch people try on clothes, but I'll make an exception for Rachel. I feel like it's like all the time I just feel like score. Fuck yeah. Thing about feet too? What's the thing about feet? People use them to walk on? I already knew that. I have 2 of them myself. Here's one. Hello, this is my foot. Hello everybody. This is right foot. Now let me introduce you to left foot. Hello everybody. I'm left foot. I'm a lot lefter than right foot. Highlight joke. I'm introducing people to my feet. I've got 2 of them, one on the right and one on the left, which gives me a significant advantage to those people who have 2 feet on one leg and no foot on the other leg. I was wondering if you might have sent me some literature on it. On my feet? Yeah, Winston's mom, why haven't you sent Boba Fett any literature about my feet? You should have done so by now. He's missing out on important foot-related information. She sent it ages ago, Boba Fett. Ages ago, okay? Check your email for once. Effie, eat. You do that same thing that Winston mom did. Anyway, you want to hear something ridiculous about the golden pair, which is INFJ and ENTP according to Kiersey. I'm not one who references Kiersey, but he's right about that, I'll tell you. So Rachel and I were in the car pulling bong rips, and she was feeling all like worried or something. This is a psych ward intake area. No, this is the part of the hotel where I can live stream from and not have the background music that's playing over there get me content claimed, you know? Because yesterday's live stream from the other part of the lobby, it picked up too much background song. Yeah, Flow State, I don't know if you're aware, but Rachel and Delilah and I are selling the Arcadia house that both my parents are dead, and moving to Mariposa. In fact, we're a day into, we're 2 days into now, 1 day into now, a 10-day escrow and only a 5-day inspection period. You're in the ESTP googag now. Respect the pronouns. Hey, ladies. Yeah, right. Well, it worked out really well. We listed it a little lower than the typical listing price for that house would have been, and as a consequence, we had literally 300 people walk through that fucking house. No, we're getting $100,000 over list, all cash. A full cash offer of $1.25 million with a 10-day escrow and a 5-day inspection period. And we're doing this deal as a contingency buy. The house we're buying in Mariposa, which is a nicer house, is $495,000. So we did get an offer for $1.3 million, but it was a financed offer and had a long escrow and a lot of contingency shit. So we took the offer that's $50,000 less, but all cash and short escrow and short inspection and no contingencies and stuff, because we have a deal set up where when this house closes escrow, which will be January 20th, the purchased house closes escrow like 2 days later, you know? No, I don't care who buys my house. I'm not going to be living there anymore, so what do I care? A couple of Chinese people bought it. Their names, the two people who bought it are named like Wing Lao Cheng and Zhao Tzu Pu, or something like that. You know, I don't even remember what their names are, but that's just what happens in Arcadia. Old white people die. Their kids inherit their house and they sell it to Chinese people. You're going to build an Earth ship? You don't need a ship to get to Earth. Like, Joe, you're already on Earth. CJ, what up to you as well? I mean, I'm not even going to meet the buyers, you know. The real estate agent dealt with all that. I thought maybe the real estate agent was exaggerating when he said we had like 300 people go through the house. And then I talked to my next door neighbor, Chad, yesterday, and he was like, I cannot believe the amount of people who came through this house last week. There was a line outside of your house because Dean would only let a certain number of people in at a time. There was a line at the open house out into the street of Chinese people wanting to look at the house. So the thing is, I think we're making a spectacular deal here. No, you know what happened, Flow State, is I called in an estate sale company to come and just take all the shit out of the house and auction it. Yesterday you mentioned absolute values, and is it your own theory? Well, it's my own correct observation. um, that your first, third, fifth, and seventh slot functions work as absolute values, which is to say you consider them ends in themselves, whereas your second, fourth, sixth, and eighth function as instrumental values, which is to say you view them as means to an end. And you can see this observationally by just observing any type. If you can be confident about what type they are, you will see them display that instrumentality and absolute value quality time and time again. And I will give you an example right now. Rachel and I were sitting in the car, and she was saying, we're talking about, our schedule of events. After we complete this move, then we got to schedule a funeral in Missouri. I got to fly both my parents' ashes back to Missouri, bury them in their family plots in Missouri, which is where my mom's family is originally from. And while I'm in Missouri, after the funeral for this date, I want you and I to hang out, but not in Kansas because I don't want to get arrested. So, anyway, what are the chances you get a bad case of seller's regret later? 0. Because the house we're selling is selling a little bit above appraised value, and at a time when the market's going down. The house we're buying at substantially below appraised value. It sat on the market 180 days before they dropped the price $90,000, and then we put together this contingency buy. So we're getting a house that appraises at over $600,000 for $495. We're selling a house that appraises at 1.2 for 1.25. So it's a good deal. It's a smart decision, And I believe it to be the case that the market around here is going to stay flat, and the market around Yosemite, where we're buying the house, right across the street from the National Forest, is going to appreciate dramatically. And the only reason that it was as cheap as it was is there was a fire up there last year, so there's some burn areas. But we can wait that out a few years, no big deal. And it's not burn areas right around our house. It's just over there somewhere, Also, California's having a great wet winter. If we can have a few great wet winters, that property in Yosemite is going to skyrocket in value because it's a gorgeous house. It's built in 2000. It's all like customized out, and no, there's nothing wrong with the house we're buying. It's impeccable. It's in way better shape than the house we're selling. Nothing wrong with it at all. It is in a area that's considered a high burn threat. So like fires are a problem up in Mariposa, or they might potentially be. They were last summer. But California's got this program that lets people who live in high fire danger areas get fire insurance, even though no insurance companies want to insure you for fire. As always, waiting for you to stream, by the way. I wish I could stream without spending any energy. The house was built in 2000. The house we're selling was remodeled in 1990 and was built in 1946 or something like that. And the thing is, the house we're buying was clearly put together by an ESTJ. It's super efficient and well thought out for TE stuff. So we're buying it fully furnished. we said we just want it just like it is, because if Rachel and I were to try to furnish it, we would not do nearly as good a job. It's got these great chairs with these great reclining things with drink holders in them that look like they're brand new and stuff, and big TV and 2 wood burning stoves, 2 stories. It's above the snow line, so like it snows in the winter there when it rains. When we looked at it, it was covered in snow. It was just gorgeous. And the thing is, of course, it's not my deal. It's not my deal at all. It's Delilah's deal. I've made all the decisions, and I put it together along with the 2 real estate agents. But my name's not on anything. It's the trust that is doing this business, and Delilah's the only trustee. So I have successfully maximized being a baby. I am now completely a baby. I have 2 moms, my daughter, who's in charge of all of the money, but who defers to me about everything, and my wife, who is in charge of being frugal. So I just, like, whatever amount of money that goes in my check account, put the same amount in hers. And I'll run out of money, and she'll have money still in there, you know. I'm like, oh, I gotta get another ounce of mushrooms today. I'm not going to be able to trip hard if I don't eat a whole ounce because I just ate half an ounce yesterday. I'm really into mushrooms right now. And there's a store near my house that sells them. Near my house here in Arcadia, there's also a store that's a little further away from our Mariposa house that sells them. And so when it comes time for our wedding, this is what I was going to say about absolute instrumental values. Oh yeah, I have obligations. I'm doing a great job of meeting them. I'm freeing up a shit ton of liquid capital. Oh, obligations to you. Oh no, I definitely want to hang out with you in Mariposa, dude. I mean, not in Mariposa, in Missouri. We're going to extend our trip a day or 2 beyond what we need for the funeral, explicitly to hang out with you. Because there are 2 words that I like independently, but that I like a lot better when they're put next to each other. The first of those 2 words is hot. And the second of those 2 words is rails. What's it called? Verona? Verona, I think is what it's called. Verona, Missouri. It's called the Green River Valley Cemetery, I believe. I may be 51 years old, but I do drugs like someone half my age. Well, as soon as the Mariposa move is done, then we got to schedule the funeral, which means basically it'll be at least 8 weeks after we get to Mariposa before we go to Missouri, because I haven't gotten a real ID yet. So I do have the necessary stuff, but I'm going to have to go to Mariposa, get a new driver's license. Now that I found the original copy of my birth certificate, I can get real ID, which will allow me to get on a plane and fly somewhere, you know? Because I don't want to drive to Missouri. Mushroom era, Eric. Oh, so you can fly with just regular driver's license now? Okay, well, if that's the case, then it might be sooner than that. I was assuming I was going to have to get my driver's license replaced before I was going to be able to fly. But if I can fly with my existing driver's license, or if I can find my passport, which it seems doubtful I'm going to be able to find my passport. I'm much better at losing things like that than I am at finding them. But if, in fact, I can fly with a regular ID, then it'll be sooner. We'll try to schedule it like 1 month after we arrive, after we're settled into Mariposa. We'll be flying out to Missouri. We moved to Mariposa on basically January 23rd. You're such an offender, Flowstay. You are such an offender. The funny thing is, that's a better term for you than a criminal, right? Or a felon. You didn't commit any crimes, but you just offended your local government. You offended them by being free. How dare you be free? You offend me. We are Pratt. We are Pratt and we don't like you. Those fucks. Oh my God, I hate those fucking people down there who did that shit to you. I wish you would have listened to me and not gotten yourself in trouble and thereby destroying my brilliant legal plan. But, you know, you're an ESTP, so you're gonna do what you're gonna do, you know. Ain't nobody gonna stop Taylor from doing what he's gonna do. You're not remorseful for not committing a crime? No, if you had just gotten busted once, my legal strategy would have worked. When you got busted the second time on bail, that's when you made it impossible for me to do anything legally. But I mean, don't get me wrong, Taylor. It's not your fault for getting busted. It's those fascists' fault for being cunts. Yeah, I didn't tell them not to raid you again. That was my bad. I should have called them and said, don't raid Taylor again. And you know what? What's interesting, Taylor? Guess what I now have? A gun. Uh-oh. I have a gun now. I have a 22 bolt action rifle. But it actually, it has a magazine in the bottom of it too. It's not the rifle I remember. I think it's a different 22 bolt action rifle. But because the one I remember from a kid, you went like this, and then like this, and then like this, and then like this. This one, it just goes back and forward. It doesn't go up at all. And you shoot one bullet at a time, but then when you go like this, it pulls the next bullet up from the magazine. So now I have a rifle. My dad, it turns out, had like several guns. And, you know, the one he shot himself with was a 9mm handgun. Oh, that's a charging handle, not a bolt? Okay. I'll remember that. I'll refer to it as such. My dad had also, somewhere in the house, apparently like a 44 Magnum or something. The estate sale people took it to the gun store to sell. Or, I don't know what they did with it actually. But, I mean, I know they took it to a gun store or something, but I don't know if they sold it or, I don't know. Well, I'll find out when this whole process is over and I get the final report from the estate sale people. But I said to them, go get me back that rifle, because I thought it was the one I remember from when I was a kid. You only need to rack the first round of the clip to charge it. After that, the rest of the clip should be semi-auto, no racking necessary. No, I never even saw it. the thing is, I searched that house, top to bottom, looking for that 22 rifle, and I could not find it. The estate sale people found several guns, but I asked for the rifle back. I have an air pistol to shoot peacocks that shoots babies at them. Because I got so mad at the peacocks shitting on my deck all the time that I just had to go get an air pistol with CO2 cartridge to shoot BBs at them. But I'm so bad at shooting things that the peacock's like 5 feet away from me, sitting on the ground. I still somehow managed to miss it. I'm really, really bad at shooting things. I mean, I didn't know anybody could have such bad aim. He probably had hidden stash spots built in the paneling, pretty standard for Richwood. Maybe, I don't know. The other thing is he kept all of his guns loaded with the safeties off. Apparently. So, but that's ESTJ stuff. What's the point of having a gun if it's not ready to use? Just like when I was a little kid, he just had the rifle in his closet stacked with stacks of ammunition next to it, and his way of being gun safe with his small child was saying to me, don't play with that. But he specifically bought that 9mm, which is a Spanish 9mm, to kill himself with. And he did it because he didn't want to make a mess. It was a remarkably clean headshot. I'm not sure if he did it like this or what, but the back of his head was all just blood pouring out of it. But he did it over in the side yard where it would be easy to clean up. Can you imagine? You're about to off yourself and you're thinking things like, well, I want to make sure I'm easy to clean up so I don't interfere with my family's dinner plans. Yeah, it was considerate of him and incredibly absurd because I'm convinced my dad thought it was a good idea to kill himself on Monday morning so that the business of him having killed himself didn't occupy our afternoon. I'm totally convinced that this is what his thinking was. Well, they've got stuff to do tomorrow evening, so I better get this over in the morning. It's like, Dad, you did not do a good job of anticipating the amount of turmoil this was going to cause and throw us into. It's like, first thing that happens is I might hear this loud bang, and then Rachel and I come out of our respective rooms and look at each other and we're like, what the hell was that? And then I see my dad's legs sticking out from behind the side of the house like the legs of the Wicked Witch of the West. And I go over there, and at this point I think he's fallen and hit his head on the wall of the house. And that would make the bang maybe. Didn't see any gun. And so I'm like, Dad. And it was very obvious to me. We called 911, and then they said start chest compressions, and I did it half-heartedly, but like as I was doing like the first one, he had his death rattle, and I could tell he was dead, Then the cops show up with the ambulance people, and the first thing they do, of course, is see the gun. And now all of a sudden, Rachel and I are murder suspects. They put police tape all around the house. They gave us gunshot residue tests. They, at first, a lot of them were very suspicious that we had killed him. because their reasoning was, well, how could you possibly not have seen the gun? It was right there. And the answer is, I don't know. I just came over here and my dad's lying on the ground bleeding out of the back of his head, and I'm not looking around for a gun I didn't even think existed. As far as I knew, we had one gun in the house, which was a 22 bolt action rifle. I was completely wrong. We didn't have that rifle anymore. We have a different 22 rifle, and he had several handguns that I had no idea existed. But that 9mm, he bought it specifically for that purpose. And what convinced them in part that we didn't kill him was he had been Google searching ways to safely shoot yourself. He wanted to make sure he didn't cause any collateral damage, right? So, but he did it. Like, okay, Rachel was sleeping in this room right here. Her head's here. He shot himself right here on the other side of this wall. By the lemon tree. So, needless to say, it woke Rachel up. And I was in the back house, you know. I think I was considering getting out the clippers to give myself a haircut. If I had chosen to do so, like an hour before I was about to do it, I probably would have interfered with my dad's plans. But you know, well, I mean, like I said, here's the wall. Rachel's head is here as she's sleeping. My dad's right here. So, it was a loud enough bang that it made me wonder what it was. I came out and looked at Rachel, what was that? But the thing is, there have been a lot of loud bangs around our house because the neighbors have been doing construction and stuff. And sometimes like a peacock will land and like knock a pot over and it'll break, and that might be a loud bang. And like I said, I didn't think we had any handguns in the house. So it didn't even occur to me that he had shot himself until the cops were escorting us down the driveway, and I heard one of them say the word gunshot. And I said, gunshot? He shot himself? And, you know, the cops found that kind of hard to believe. Like, that I could not have, I could have been there doing chest compressions on this guy who just shot himself and think that he had just fallen down when the back of his head is blown off and is bleeding on the ground, right? So, I guess I don't blame them for being skeptical at all. I was perfectly happy to be investigated for the crime because I knew I didn't do it. But the thing is, when you hit a situation like that, you get this kind of tunnel vision where it's like all I'm doing is looking at my dad and seeing this bright red blood coming out of the back of his head and going, Dad, you know? I just wasn't looking around at all. Yeah, well, they had plenty of good reasons to suspect us. But the good news is, we didn't do it. So, they grilled us both separately. They separated us and questioned us both separately. But the thing is, by the time they put together all the pieces of information, it was very obvious that he had killed himself because, after all, I had just taken him to the doctor the week before to get him on an antidepressant because he was telling me he was depressed. And of course, the doctor doesn't want to listen to Eric and prescribe him what Eric says, even though the doctor should. The doctor insists on prescribing him Remeron instead, which he didn't like, and he shot himself like 4 days after getting that prescription. So, once the coroner got his antidepressants and heard the fact that his wife had just been put into hospice and a bunch of other stuff, then they I would have advised you as your riff-raffy friend not to talk to the police regarding suspicious gun tests. What do I know? I had no problem talking to the police about this one because it was going to be impossible for them to prove that I did it because I definitely didn't, and neither did Rachel. And, you know, and my dad had so many good reasons to call it a day, you know. His wife was in hospice. He had lost his hearing completely. He had mostly lost his sight. He had 2 broken ribs from when he fell, when he had COVID, and he had a high fever, and he fell down and broke 2 ribs. He couldn't get around. He couldn't even walk around the block without falling down. He kept like testing to see what he could still do when he could avoid me and Rachel checking on him. He tried to drive the car around the block and crashed into the gate. And like I said, his wife was in hospice. He'd just been put in hospice, which means last 120 days. And he's NI-polar, so it's like he didn't really get that this was going to happen until it did, you know. So I'm a big believer in talking to the cops when you're innocent, because the truth does nothing but set you free. I'm a huge believer in not saying things to the cops when you're guilty. But I'm also a huge believer in not lying to the cops, just remaining silent. You shouldn't. Lying backfires consistently. It backfired on me when I was arrested in Oklahoma. When I lied to the cops. I told them that my box full of drugs was not a box full of drugs. I don't know. That's not a box full of drugs. Your strategy involved recognizing in America, Eric is more emotionally durable than Rachel. I mean, the thing is, the exact opposite proved to be true. Or at least, Rachel is much more emotionally stable than I am. I got over it pretty quick, I guess, in a few months, you know. And then my mom's death was just like a complete relief. It didn't even make me sad. It made me happy because he was, of course innocence matters. Of course it does. But I get why most people would be correct to have more like your attitude, Taylor. Because most people aren't as good as I am at using the truth. No, I know. But literally every person in the world is an easier person for them to make into a defendant than me. It's not that I trust cops, I trust myself. Yeah, sure. You know, somebody came into the stream yesterday. I think it was Fyug Hug Kyuk. And he said, the truth is a lion. Once you let it out, nothing can stop it. I said, that's completely bullshit. The truth is a bullet. The truth is a bullet. And you use it to get what you want. Well, who decides whether or not to charge you? Well, I mean, the coroner basically. The coroner came and he ruled it suicide. But by the time the coroner got there and took the body away and stuff, because when you have that happen, the coroner comes to the house and basically does a lot of coroner work while the body's there on the ground. So that, no, well, I mean, the detectives took the GSR shit, right? But the coroner rules it either a homicide or a suicide. We are back. I'm on my phone, which makes it a little bit more difficult to live stream because I have to read fast because the chat comes up and then it fades away. I got these new glasses, so I can read a little bit better than I used to be able to. As long as you're here, darling, that's all that matters. Fist bump right back to you, sir. Fist bump, return, reciprocated. I was trying to answer this question about absolute and instrumental values with this example with Rachel, which I want to finish this example, okay? Nice catching up with you too, Flow State. Well, I'll see you when we get to Missouri, okay? We're going to have a good time. You know what I love? It begins with duh and ends with rugs. Anyway, yeah, I will, for sure. As soon as I get the funeral date scheduled, I will let you know when we will be in Missouri, exactly where in Missouri we will be, how far away that is from you. We will be able to drive to you. I'm glad you live in Missouri, so I don't have to go into Kansas. That's great, because I'm afraid to go to Kansas now. I'm also afraid to go to Oklahoma. But I will. Missouri is fine. I have no problem going to Missouri. Anyway, Rachel was saying, listen, Eric, you know, I don't want you to marry me just because I want you to marry me. I want you, if you don't want to get married, we don't have to get married. And I said, Rachel, I don't place any weight in the institution of marriage. As far as I'm concerned, I'm married if I say I am, and I'm not if I say I'm not. And these third parties getting involved just seems ridiculous to me. But I want to marry you, Rachel, because it'll make you happy, and I want to make you happy. She was very unhappy with that answer. She really didn't like that answer. So I said, okay, how about this one? I want to marry you as a means of proactive FE defense. Because if I don't marry you, then somebody might say, well, if you really loved her, you'd marry her. And she was like, oh, okay, well, that's a good reason. This is what I talk about. This is what I mean when I'm talking about instrumental and absolute values. She wants to get married, but her feelings are not an absolute value for her. And trying to use feelings as a justification for marrying her produces her looking like she's going to throw up. However, her instrumental tool function is FE, so she totally understands playing FE prevent defense. And then last night when I went to the hotel room at some point, I said to her, isn't it funny how you think that proactive FE prevent defense is a better reason to marry you than I want to make you happy? And we agreed that was kind of funny. I do love her a great deal, but I don't consider marrying somebody an expression of love. I do consider marrying Rachel a good way to make her happy, and I want to make her happy because I love her. I mean, it's kind of, in some sense, it's kind of my life's mission to make her happy. She's so perfect, so good to me. I, I could have never, I have never been in any relationship remotely this good. In fact, I've never even seen anybody else's relationship that's this good. We could not be more compatible. We spend like almost every waking minute together. We never get sick of each other. Also, my 37-year-old wife does not look like she is 37 years old at all. She got carded in Portland to go into a 21 and over place. People are constantly mistaking her for my daughter. But I'm not even cradle robbing. She's 37. How great is that? And bam, just like bam, you know? I'm not really that into sensory stuff like sexual intercourse. But Rachel's converting me into a sensor in that area because, you know, historically I've not been. Historically, you might say I've had no game. I didn't have any game at all until after I broke up with Kimberly. Then, that was the first time in my life when I felt like I had game. But I didn't need it because Rachel had figured out that she was going to be my wife, I guess, probably before she ever even did anything like talk to me, you know. She probably had it all figured out. After some quantum losses, you are given quantum wins, i.e. not a cradle robber, but she looks young and beautiful. Right, exactly. Because when I was looking for a new girlfriend after Kimberly, one of my rules was I was not going to go out with anyone under 30 because proactive FE defense. And it's worked out beautifully because haters come in here to the stream if Rachel's here, and if they haven't tried to hate this way before and realize it backfires on them, they try to accuse me of being a cradle robber. And then I say, oh, actually she's 37. Now their insult has turned into a compliment of both me and Rachel. So it works out beautifully. You know, I feel like score, and also I feel like, ha ha, your attempted attack just totally blew up in your face. You know, shockingly, amazingly, as you may know, if you were here yesterday, I actually got 10 Adderall pills from out of the CVS. I know. Ridiculous, huh? The doctor called it in December 30th. My prescription for 60 pills. I managed to squeeze 10 pills out of them on January 10th or whatever it was. Like, come on, CVS. Get your act together. But, you know, that's life in the big city, as they say. The DEA, FDA, or whoever that created this Adderall shortage needs to go fuck themselves. And additionally, what they're going to end up doing is they're going to end up, if I keep having this much trouble getting my Adderall, they're going to end up getting me to get a prescription for meth instead. Yes. Am I back? Am I live? Or am I Memorex? Why am I on Adderall? Because Adderall is amphetamines, and I like speed. Like one of my favorite drugs. I like speed and I like mushrooms a lot. No, I like being on drugs. I don't care about its supposed Like, I don't have a problem, right? And ADHD is not a real thing. I don't have a problem that needs to be treated with drugs. I like to take drugs because they're fun. That's why I have an Adderall prescription. Yeah, it's totally not. ADHD is just a way of pathologizing ENTPs and ESTPs mostly. But I got lucky in this sense. I've been saying it too. You and I have been saying the same thing. I got lucky in this sense. My general practitioner doctor is an ISTP, and I'm his supervisor type. So he basically just does what I say. And the other thing that's completely bullshit is Asperger's or autism spectrum. Oh, he's great. He's fantastic. The ISTP doctor, this is what I love about him. I'll call in my prescription. He will call it into the pharmacy within like 20 minutes after I call it. No matter what time of day I call it in. He's just like, bam, done. So, he's great. But he cannot make people have Adderall when they don't. He can't make CVS have Adderall. The thing about the autism is real, okay? Autism is a form of mental or cognitive disability that includes retardation, mental retardation. What they used to call mental retardation, what they now just call cognitive disability or whatever. People who are autistic have a quality that is very much like being FE polar, okay? In addition to being mentally retarded, they have very bad FE stuff, right? Real autism is real autism. It always incorporates and includes mental retardation. If you are just FE polar, however, or even FE fourth, there's a decent chance nowadays you're going to be diagnosed as autism spectrum. Because yes, autistic people share this one quality with FE polar people, but that doesn't make FE polar people autistic. It's insane. It's completely insane. It's just stupid, idiot psychology people who are projecting their own frame of reference onto everybody. I'm an FE tool user or FE DOM psychology person. Therefore, the fact that you have FE polar means you're disabled. My nephew seems like he's going to be an INFP to me. Well, he is whatever he is. He's not going to be anything. All about how he feels and how comfortable he is. Yes, I agree. My INTP friend seems like he could be autistic. Right. Well, he's your INTP friend is likely to get diagnosed as autism spectrum, you know. But that's a totally terrible diagnosis. How much of Asperger's is a prioritization of concrete thinking over emotions, and one part of it is neurocognitive abnormality. There's nothing neurocognitively abnormal about autism spectrum. It's just one of 16 configurations that seems wildly abnormal to people who have conflicting configurations. Actual autism is a different matter, and I don't really know or have any good explanations for what it is, or I've worked with autistic people plenty. I used to be a special ed teacher, but I don't feel like I really understand what autism is, especially. I know that if you are autistic, you are um, neuro, you're neuroatypical, as they say. But here's the deal: there is no positive or equal form of neuroatypical. Neuroatypical is just another word for saying either retarded or I'm this type and not some other type. You're not atypical for your type, you're just atypical because maybe you're a rare type, but there's no atypicality that's not retardation or some other mental disability. You know, like I was watching Naked and Afraid, and some stupid lady's like, I'm neuroatypical because I'm meh 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 meh. You're not neuroatypical. You're just FE polar, and you want to have you want it to be a disability rather than to understand things. Here's the thing about psychology in general: because it's operating under the wrong frame of reference, namely, it's not operating under a cognitive frame of reference that understands people as one of 16 distinct and mostly individual defining configurations of attentional priorities. It treats individuals as deviating from a single average person, and therefore is constantly getting everything wrong and is constantly projecting the individual psychology or psychologist's attentional stack as a normative good or a as neurotypical, right? So what a given psychologist or psychiatrist thinks is neurotypical depends entirely on what that psychologist or psychiatrist stack is, not what the patient's is. And they don't understand that. And that's why shit's all fucked up. Yeah, everyone's got their bias, right? But the difference, ultimate disciple, between you and me and other people is we have the correct map with cognitive functions to recognize that we are the same as they are, that we have our own bias and we're projecting it onto the world too. And because, I don't know what type you are, but because I'm a highly N and T type, having the right map really helps me live better. In other words, I am much more successful at being Eric when I understand correctly which map to use to understand the world than when I'm operating from a bad map. Now, other types don't necessarily need maps to be correct to live well, right? But I do. And psychiatrists and psychologists do if they want to be non-harmful in their treatment or whatever you want to call what they do. And it's like, just look at what happened to poor Rachel. She spent 10 years being an insurance cash cow as they failed to treat her bipolar syndrome and instead tried to treat her for cannabis addiction. When she moved out here, I hired a private psychiatrist and they had her completely fixed in 2 visits. And the reason he was successful at getting her fixed is because I carefully chose the right psychiatrist whose words all said the right things. So I believed him to be competent. I did believe him to be an INTP, but I actually think now that he's an INFP. He's just a really, he's a psychiatrist, so obviously he's very smart. And he and I spent the whole first hour with me grilling the shit out of him and him scrambling to come up with answers. and the first meeting we had, he's like, okay, well then why do you even need me if you know so much? I'm like, because you can prescribe drugs and I can't, dummy. And he was just like, oh. You're an INFJ, unchallengeable. I'm not trying to challenge it. from the way you've been talking, I believe it. There's nothing contraindicative of it. So, but I can't affirm that you're an INFJ without actually typing you myself, personally, but I don't disbelieve you. Okay, I gotta go outside and smoke a cigarette. Last time I tried to take the phone outside with me to smoke a cigarette, it's like the Wi-Fi cuts off exactly at the door or something. I don't know how they managed to pull that off, but so I'm gonna leave the phone here and I'm gonna walk over there and smoke a couple hits off a cigarette and I'll be right back. If you guys don't mind too much, if you could quietly chat amongst yourselves while I'm gone, I would appreciate it. Our drive to survive demonstrates an adaptation via our genetic basis. Yeah. Okay, so let me go smoke this bit of a cigarette. I have to be the worst person in the world at managing pockets. So I went outside. Before I go outside, I took this key, which I need to get in through that door there, into here for some reason. Put this in my pocket. Go outside, get a cigarette out, and then cannot find the key anywhere to get back in. I will read what you say, Shuffler. I have to put my glasses on. Because I'm live streaming from my phone today because my laptop broke. First order of business today is buying a new laptop. I asked my phone what time Best Buy opens. They don't open until 10. But Staples and Office Depot open at 8 a.m. Oh, that was Ruben, not Shuffler. I thought it was Shuffler because Shuffler's name is Green, too. Like 20 years. Charlatans for about 18.5 of those years. I'm beginning to understand thanks to Erica's community. Well, thank you, Ruben. That's very kind of you to say. The thing is, I was just as baffled as everybody else for most of my life. I learned about cognitive functions about 10 to 12 years ago. I started making videos about cognitive functions about 8 years ago or 9 years ago. And I feel like I finally really understood and got them down within the last 2 years or so. I don't trust my typings of people older than that. And I still don't always get it right, you know. It it's not an exact science. I'm more likely to get it right than anybody else, but uh, you know, you get an hour. With introverts, you're seeing a lot of an extroverted tool function. That can be a little bit misleading. And sometimes, if you have a polar that I can't test for directly with really definitive and get really definitive information from that, then I can't really necessarily be 100% on certain types. But for the ones that I have a nice, super clean polar test to, I can be really 100%. Because once you identify the polar, then it's just a matter of figuring out which one of the two it is, you know. There's two types that have the same polar, and once you figure out what someone's polar is, you just got to figure out which of those two types they are, and then that's easy enough to do because you can eliminate various things. I was talking to Lou DeFay last night about her type, and when typing someone, I can't look for a specific function. I have to be open and observe, and it just comes into my mind after it's simmered for a while. That's a very INFJ thing to say. That definitely is a very INFJ thing to say. Just like when I was talking to Lou about her type last night, because I foolishly second-guessed myself about her for a second thought. Usually, INFJs don't get all tatted up, and she's kind of all tatted up, and she's chattier than Rachel. So I was musing irresponsibly that maybe she was some kind of STP, ESTP maybe or something. She's definitely beta quadra, but anyway, because I had irresponsibly mused out loud about that, I had to talk to her again last night and double check her type. So I asked her this question, like, what do you think the number one mistake that people make in the world is that causes problems? And her answer was thinking they know when they don't. And so I said, okay, so you think then that the problem is people take action with inadequate knowledge? And she says, no, I'm not talking about knowledge. I'm talking about knowing. Like, that's an INFJ move right there. That's some third slot TI. And here's another example of Lou's third slot TI. It said, like, who's somebody who really makes you mad? A public figure that really makes you mad. And she said, Tucker Carlson. I said, okay, and why does, or she said, do you want to know why? Because I didn't ask her why. And she said, it's because he's lying all the time. And I said, okay, well, can you tell me, like, what is he lying about, or what those lies are? What she meant is that he's propagandizing all the time. But because she's an INFJ, she views that as a lie, even though it's not. It's bullshit propagandizing, but it's not a lie. Because she understands it as bullshit, she views it as a lie because she's not very precise with her language. She's maybe right about him being fundamentally not honest because he's propagandizing rather than trying to be informative. But he's not lying, you know? So the thing is, that's third slot TI in an INFJ. She's right in general, but she's using the wrong word. The types themselves, even as words, have a certain feel to them. It's amazing. Yeah, well, it's like somebody came into the stream yesterday and said they believed I was an EHP, And they believed that C.S. Joseph was also an ENTP. And I said, well, have you considered comparing the two of us against each other? Because we're absolutely nothing alike. You've got to be wrong about one of us. So, the fact is, ultimate disciple, your observation first approach is the best approach. It's the right approach to take if you're not in a hurry. Ideally, if I were to type people, I'd spend time observing them without them being aware that I was observing them, and then I'd ask them questions and verify things. Of course, because I type people like for work, I guess you'd call it. Maybe you'd call it work. I don't know. I don't really do a lot of real work, I instead enjoy totally undeserved privilege. Anyway, because I'm typing people, I have an hour, and I'm driving the session with trying to question here, eliminate this, eliminate that, concluded this or that, etc. I don't end up doing a lot of, I never end up doing observation of people before I type them. But if I were to do it ideally, you're right, Ultimate Disciple, that one would be best suited to begin by simply observing them in their natural environment and drawing some tentative conclusions from that, and then questioning them and confirming or invalidating those tentative conclusions. It's just, I don't necessarily love the work, and now I don't need the money, so. The ultimate disciple was talking to the world, CJ. The whole world. And America, too. Don't underestimate the loudness of his voice. I agree, CJ, but what gives my intuition confidence is seeing Eric recognize and demonstrate NI fluency in the spirit of transparency. Yeah, well, Rachel's helped me to be more NI. Like, I'm gradually doing a better job of being concise and expressing what I'm saying, and in having those concise expressions carry more NI pop. Because people like NI pop. It makes them feel like they clearly understand things. I have a lot of pride in the fact that if I'm wrong, I will admit it fast or look more stupid if I don't. I mean, that is a good thing that you're doing. And it's also not something you really should credit yourself for, because you've got, if you are an INFJ, you have only objective epistemology functions conscious. It's really hard to lie to yourself. But that doesn't mean you can't be wrong, obviously. And NI-DOMs will intuit objectively about everything, even things that require only subjective knowledge. Like, I asked Lou last night to tell me when the last time she was sick was, and I asked her additionally to tell me what it felt like. She struggled to remember the last time she was sick, and then what being sick felt like to her. She had all of the words she used to describe feeling sick were emotions. She was sick. She never once mentioned having a runny nose or a sore throat or upset stomach or anything. She mentioned being frustrated and unhappy. It's like, that's not how you describe being sick. That's FI, not SI. It's really hard to lie to myself, but I genuinely feel the knowing this sort of sensation. I'm ISTJ, like in my immovability. Well, I mean, the thing is, ultimate disciple, like Rachel is righter than me, and I'm more correct than she is. My intuition is not nearly as reliable as hers, but her explanations are garbage. You know, I'm much better at explaining why she's right than she is. That's what makes me correct. When you're NIFE, you have these holistic understandings of things that factor in all these various dynamic things. They create a synergy. This holistic truth is greater than the sum of its parts. Those kind of things I can't explain because they don't deconstruct, right? So I just trust her because I've been with her for a few years, and I've come to understand that don't listen to Rachel's reason, listen to what she says, because she's right. And if you try to evaluate it based on her reason, Eric, you're going to think she's wrong, because her reason's dumb. But she's right anyway. And this happens all the time. Like, little things with big things. The tissue box is a perfect example. We have this staged house with a box that is supposed to hold a square Kleenex box inside of it. You know, it's like a Kleenex box cover box. And I said, like, yeah, I was just talking about it the other day on the stream. Like, we have this dumb box that's bullshit that has no tissues in it, even though it says tissues on it. And she says, I think it says tissue on it. Why would it say tissue? That makes no sense at all. It's a tissues box. It provides tissues, not just one tissue. And we went and checked, and of course, even though I was 100% sure it said tissues, of course, as always, Rachel was right. And she's not like she's got good SI. She's got terrible SI. But she just is, it just somehow is right about things, you know? Like when she got neuropathy from nitrous oxide, she knew that was what caused it, even though it made no sense that that would have caused it. You know? Because I made the correct intuitive leap based on the data we had, but she was right anyway, and I was wrong. And I just kept doing whippets until I gave myself neuropathy. So, you know. Here's where and how Rachel was wrong. She was consistently wrong about my dad, because INFJs assume that everybody must have at least a little bit of intuition, but my dad was NI-polar. So Rachel thought, hey, you know what, we should call this realtor Janet, because Eric's dad has her refrigerator magnets all over his refrigerator. If you assume somebody's got any intuition, you'd assume my dad must think she's a good real estate agent. No, my dad just liked refrigerator magnet calendars and never took them off the fridge. So it's like, once 2003's refrigerator magnet calendar went on the refrigerator, it stayed there forever. And the person who kept sending him refrigerator magnets in the mail was Janet Hupp. Rachel thought, we'll sort of respect your father's wishes about which real estate agent, because she thought my dad had some kind of intuition. But he didn't have any intuition. He just liked refrigerator magnets. I've been known to get off on the wrong platform sometimes. Wait a minute, this isn't Pornhub. Is that what it means to get off on the wrong platform? NI is kind of hard to define. It's probably the hardest function to define, but the bottom line is it's objective knowing. It's observational knowing rather than experiential knowing. And I don't like Rachel. When we were sitting in the car, and I was explaining to her my incredibly important explanation about why it was a poor decision of mine to get peach rings at CVS, she kept noticing the people having a party in the park across the street. Because she's an NI-DOM means she's in constant receive mode, objectively about the external world. And her conscious deliberation function is TI, the objective one, which means she knows everything about everyone and the world and nothing about herself. Yeah, objective knowing. Introverted intuition is the only actual form of intuition. Extroverted intuition is not a form of intuition. Extroverted intuition is the attentional manner of creativity. And we know that extroverted intuition isn't a form of intuition in any meaningful sense because, like, you get an ESTJ like Dave Matthews, he's got any third. He loves creating stuff, but he has zero intuition, so it's all terrible. We should call extroverted intuition extroverted creating or extroverted ideation or something like that. Because the thing to remember about NE is it creates newness by incorporating particulars, which are unique to a given situation, and universals, and combining them into something new. It gathers information from SE. I'm going to tell a story that's NE that's all based on SE. That's the end of that Kaiser Soze movie, right? The Usual Suspects. That's an example of somebody NEing entirely off of SE cues. But what makes NE successfully original is that it combines those SE cues with SI particulars to create totally original things. However, totally original things aren't good. Something needs to both be original and archetypal to be good, aesthetically. So the reason my art is sometimes good is not because I have good extroverted intuition, it's because introverted intuition is in the fifth slot, absolute value, and quite effective at how I use it. And it's like the so-called mirage relationship, which is what I know with Rachel, is so horribly named. It's the exact opposite of a mirage. The dual relationship is a mirage. And the reason is this. If you have a so-called mirage relationship, you've got two people who are together and ecstatic with each other because they have as their absolute value, their most important unconscious absolute value, their partner's dominant function. So I genuinely think Rachel's amazing and blows me away with her brilliant intuition all the time, and celebrate that and love that so much, right? And similarly, she with I and my extroverted intuition. Duality, those people help each other suck less, okay? So that's not a terrible thing. A dual relationship, the ISFJ helps the ENTP suck less, and the ENTP helps the ISFJ suck less. But what's a preferable relationship? One in which the two people both feel extremely lucky and gratified to be together because they genuinely are so fantastically impressed and love the other person, or a relationship in which it has the utility of helping each other suck less. I'll just keep sucking, you know. It's fine. I'll be in a happy relationship and just keep sucking ass at TE. Fire is creativity. Earth is sensation. Air is logos. Water is eros. Circle is square of the four elements. And we have the ether, the philosopher's stone, breath, and I are the fifth element. That's unusually cogent, actually, for some of your trying to bundle things. Winston's mom likes to bundle ideas. She's like the flow of typology. She believes in bundling. I'm in a mirage relationship with literally everyone. No, you're not, Ruben. You're not in a mirage relationship with everybody. I'll tell you who you are in a mirage relationship with. INTP. I guess, since ENTP and INFJ is mirage, I guess ENFJ and INTP must be a mirage too. But I'm not really very good at figuring that out. Earth is defo sensing, and air is oppositional to Earth, so yeah, well, is air really the opposite of Earth? Isn't vacuum the opposite of matter? I think vacuum is the opposite of matter. Fire, meanwhile, is just the state change process that carbon undergoes when it gets hot. Air, for those who don't know, it's that stuff we breathe. Fortunately, our atmosphere has oxygen, because it's the oxygen that really matters. It's like, hey, with all this oxygen, I can really do some shit. Can you identify the archetype in your art, the art that you think is successful? Yes. I'm very accurate about my own art. Most of it's garbage, and some of it's great. I am unable to intuit wrong. I will say this. Sometimes with my own shit, if I'm too close to it for too long, it might take me a week to determine what it actually is. Because my intuition, my introverted intuition is unconscious. It takes a while for it to do its thing, you know? But no, I haven't read Motes and Beans by Michael Pierce. I'm beyond reading other people's thoughts about cognitive functions. I did a whole lot of reading about cognitive functions when I first started getting into it, but then I surpassed everybody I could read in my understanding. And I after multiple attempts, successfully corrected Jung's basic genius concept so that it's TI and TI sound, argumentationally sound. Definitions are operationalized. There's a prime directive that you can translate everything into. In other words, I made it a proper model. But you can't blame Jung for not making it a proper model. He was an INFJ. He was right, but his explanations weren't good. This is the thing, ultimate disciple. I am the only expert on this. Everybody else has it at least somewhat wrong. I know, Jung is such old news. This is what I was saying like yesterday or whatever, too, is the reason that I'm the best philosopher in the world is not because I'm the smartest, the most intuitive, the most clever, or any of those other things. It's because I'm the only active philosopher in the world who's using the correct metaframe. And you can't possibly philosophize correctly with the wrong metaframe. I mean, you're right that Jung was wrong in his explication of things, but the basic concept of attentional manners and a configuration thereof being the determinant factor in personality and affect, or definitely in personality, and a large contributing factor to affect, that was absolutely correct. He got his own type wrong because he's an INFJ and doesn't know shit about himself. He thought he was an INTP, you know. Well, look, this is because people don't understand, they don't have a definition for conscious and unconscious, right? I do, but nobody else does. You can define something as more or less conscious based on how easily you can recall instances of it, of attending in that fashion. This is why your eighth slot function is the least conscious, even though your seventh is the polar. You'll discover it's almost impossible for you to recall instances when you paid attention via your eighth slot function. So for me, what that means is I'm never really sure how I go from not doing something to doing something. It just all of a sudden I was just sitting here scratching my nuts, and now I'm taking out the trash. Well, what happened in between those two things? I have no idea. That's because SE is my most unconscious function. I don't need money to buy that book, okay? I got plenty of money. I don't want to make money out of you. The thing is this. The only explanation I can have for why I am now so blessed with financial security is that I have spent my whole life not caring about money. Even so much so that when I was dirt broke, I'd forget to have people pay me and I'd be scrounging for quarters to buy Bugler. Well, it depends which piece of art you're talking about. So let's talk a little bit about archetypes. So here's an example of a super archetypal song. Back in the USSR by the Beatles. It's their Beach Boys song. Okay? It's also a very specific kind of rock song. You know, it's an archetype that is employed in that song to make it work the way it does. So, like, for example, I have this song, that's quite anthemic. Which one am I trying to think of? I'll go with a different one. So, my song, Wonderful, Wonderful Kitty, that's a very archetypal song. It sounds like almost a jingle, but what's critical about it is its totality, its holistic totality. Everybody can identify with it personally because they get the idea of how people universally relate to cats. Wonderful, wonderful kitty, having wonderful times, always cleaning yourself, making sure you've got clean lines. Wonderful, wonderful kitty, such a fabulous soft friend. Now it's wonderful kitty petting time again. Just let me pet you, don't walk away. It's petting time too. Wonderful, wonderful kitty, having wonderful times. Always cleaning yourself, making sure you've got clean lines. Wonderful kitty is a fabulousness I've never encountered before, and I know that I want to pet my kitty some more. just let me, and then it repeats the chorus, and then it's over, right? It's holistically complete. It sets a scene that is one thing and one thing only, and the melody matches the lyrics mood-wise and stuff, and it's a very catchy song. Oh, cool. I'm super glad to hear that, Ruben. I do have available for anybody to look at what I call my playlist, what do I call that? Set list Bobette list. That's what it's called. Set list Bobette list does have my songs with the chords and the lyrics. And it's available for anybody who wants to look at it, if anybody feels like playing any of my songs. I do have some good songs. I've written hundreds of songs, but I only have maybe a dozen really good songs. If that, Wonderful Kitty's great. Cloudy Day in Los Angeles is a great song. Satchel Helpful Goods is a great song. Boba Fett's convinced me that Amelia is a pretty great song. So the style of musical container is relatable rather than the content reflecting archetype you repeatedly manifest. Well, every time I make something, I try to have, I want it to be archetypally resonant, which means that it's sharing something universal about the human experience that everybody can relate to. But I also want it to be original. So that's the trick with music. The best musics are things that sound like something you've heard before, but you've never actually heard it before. I had to have an INFJ teach me that, because prior to an INFJ teaching me, don't throw away your good stuff, Eric, because it sounds too catchy. That's the stuff you should keep. As an NE Dom, I was so consciously focused on being original, I kept throwing away all of my good melodies because they sounded kind of familiar. but I'm also, because I'm an ENTP, I can learn from other people's explanations really well. And I learned that the melodies that I was throwing away are the ones I should be keeping. Those are the good ones. Those are the hooks. And then I spent years and years trying to be good at that. It's extremely hard. It's hard to say what's harder, comedy or making good music. But what's more important is making a genius song. If you can write a genius song, you've contributed something of great importance to the world. Whereas hilarious jokes are also very, very important, but they have much shorter shelf life in terms of significance than music does. We still enjoy Mozart and stuff like that from hundreds of years ago because the songs are entities. A correct song is an entity with a distinct identity, like a person, not a construction. I mean, yeah, absurd comedy is philosophically important, but it's still operating on a shorter time scale than music. Like, Shakespeare may have been hilarious in Shakespeare's day, but he's not at all funny now. When comedy does age well, it's genius. Like Steve Martin's stand-up comedy ages well. Certain like Saturday Night Live skits and stuff age well, and some of them age terribly. You know what's comedy that I used to think was hilarious but aged terribly? Kids in the Hall. It's not funny at all. It's a little cringy, in fact. But I used to think it was hilarious. Yeah, well, the very, very best comedy has real staying power. But the problem with comedy and staying power is that definitionally, comedy is funny because it's surprising. So you can't continually be re-surprised by something you experience over and over again. Oh God, I hate Mr. Bean. Niebuhr. Oh my God. You do not have good taste in comedy. Except when you're laughing at my jokes, in which case your taste in comedy is impeccable. Okay, let's see what's going on in the old chatteroo here. I bet I can unplug it now and have enough electricity. The least funny type? ESTJs, probably. Love Nathan for you. Haven't seen rehearsal. It's not that difficult to break into my house right now. I do have all the doors locked in the main house, but I'm going to give you a little secret. I left the back house unlocked. ISFJs aren't funny. No. They don't really try to make many jokes. ESFJs aren't funny. ISTJs sometimes can be funny. Cameron makes some funny jokes occasionally. Not very often, but when he does make a joke, it's usually pretty good, actually. ESTJs, like my dad, tell straight up dad jokes. Just like horrible dad jokes. Bad puns and stuff. Oh yeah, ISTPs are not funny. They have any polar. How could they possibly be funny? ISFPs also aren't funny. The thing is, only ESTJs do things as insane as take improv comedy classes, though. Like, you can't take a class in improvising comedy. It's inherently oxymoronic. How do we know you aren't replaced by aliens every time you walk out of you? Well, did you see any aliens while I was gone? I mean, you can know that you didn't see any aliens while I was gone. Well, by Kojitsu, let's be technically correct here. It is possible to replace one party with multiple parties. Come on, chat. Come up. Grant Core's dad is an ENTJ. Thinks he's funny. And definitely isn't. ENTPs are witty AF. Anyone watch Kill Tony? I think Tony Hinchcliffe is an ENTP. I have not seen that show or even heard of it. Eric, what happens after we die? Give me the ultimate ENTP perspective. We cease to be alive. C drive. 10 hat time. The thing, here's the deal on death. It's definitionally impossible for anybody to know what happens after death, because knowing is a function of being alive. You know, it's one of those things that for us to actually know about after death requires SI knowledge, not NI knowledge. There are some things you cannot know about without actually having the particular experience. It's not possible for us to know what happens after death because not only have we never had the experience, but nobody else has had the experience and reported back on it. After all, if they died, then they can't report back on it. If they report back on it, then they didn't die. They may say they had, see a tunnel of light or whatever, but that's an experience they're having while alive, not while dead. So, NI is not knowing through conjecture. It's intuiting truths that can't be reduced. So if you say, well, what part of the engine of my car makes my car go forward? It's not any specific part. It's the synergy of all the parts working together. It's irreducible. You can't answer the question, which part of the engine makes my car go. The whole engine makes my car go when it's working in conjunction with all the parts working in conjunction with each other. NI understands those kind of irreducible truths. And an NI Dom will apply that kind of knowing to things regardless of whether it's appropriate to apply that kind of knowing to it. Which is why if you ask an INFJ what it felt like to be sick, they have no information about that to share with you because they're not knowing subjectively their experience. They're intuiting holistic truths about everything but themselves. So the thing is, we understand, we all agree that you can't know objectively about the world to successfully report on your own physical experience. Nobody can dispute that. No, I mean, the ultimate disciple I've been going out with Rachel for a long time now, and she's had a couple of medical issues and stuff. It is insane how incapable INFJs are of self-reporting about their physical state of being, their physical experience, whether they're comfortable, uncomfortable, hot, cold. You put an INFJ in a cold room with a thermostat on the wall, and they will just sit there in the cold room until somebody else turns up the thermostat. This is how unconscious their SI is. So the thing is, when you have a dominant function like that, it means the other kind of that function, in other words, the other knowledge function, is ultra unconscious. And as a consequence, INFJs, when they are wrong, it's because they think they can use intuition about something that only experience can provide information on. The people who have fluency in both knowledge functions are ESTPs and ENTPs. Your 4-5 is the one where you have fluency in both. So INFJs have fluency in both SE and NE, but they have zero fluency in SI. I have fluency in both NI and SI, but I have zero fluency in SE. I have so little fluency in SE that as soon as I say I'm going to do something, it becomes less likely to happen. If I say, come on, Rachel, we're going to Denny's, we're definitely not going to Denny's. I have to go do things and not say out loud what we're doing, or else I will not do it. No, you can't. There's only certain ways that people can grow. People can grow, and there are certain ways in which they can grow and certain ways in which they can't. The fact that you have a cognitive function configuration defines, that cognitive function configuration defines the areas of life in which you can grow and the areas in life in which you're permanently retarded. No, I'm saying you can become a better tree, but you can't become a tree that learns how to fly. That's what I mean. And that's good NI. That what I just said right there is excellent NI. You can become a better INFJ, but you can't become not an INFJ. And being conscious at all of SI would require you to not be an INFJ. But that's the beautiful thing about cognitive functions. It allows you to forgive yourself for those areas where you are permanently and irrevocably retarded. For me, it's TE and SE, basically, that I'm super retarded at. My FI, on the other hand, while incredibly retarded, doesn't cause me any problems because it's so retarded, and I'm such a baby about it, that it just happens to me. I expect to get my way. I throw tantrums when I don't. And it doesn't cause me any problems because I'm really good at throwing tantrums. But I don't think of emotions as anything other than things that happen to me randomly without me having anything to say about it. I suppose people who have FI high up in the stack are probably better at managing their own emotions. To me, I'm just a passenger on my emotions. Current core, that's hilarious. But it does provoke the question, why did the trees want us to fly? You know what? They have their own reasons. I don't need to know that. Oh, they wanted to fly. Oh, so they didn't get the part I was saying about being dead. Trees made the mistake of believing they were still alive after they were cut down. That's why they're stupid trees, It's like, tree, you're never gonna outsmart me. You're just standing there. I've got a chainsaw. Trees never die. They just evolve into paper. They just evolve into paper and lumber. Okay. The ultimate disciple, once again, says this textbook INFJ thing. My thoughts, my feelings, my experience, these are not you. What is you is the awareness of all these. Could you be any less a sensor? Are trees INFJs? INFJ trees are. You can tell the INFJ trees because they're the best dressed ones. They look sharp as fuck. They get us to do their work by gentle nudges. Is that what trees do? No. When I get to my new house, I'm gonna instruct the trees outside to gently nudge me right in the junk. Nudge, nudge again. Now start stroking. The trees of girth stay in the earth. The trees of loose play duck, duck, goose away. Phenomena, awareness of awareness, that's what you and we are as a collective. I mean, that's maybe what you and me are, but it's not what most people are. You know? It is true that INFJs and ENTPs are extraordinarily map focused, so that our understandings and mappings of things we have a tendency to mistake as parts of our identity. And they certainly are part of our personality in the sense that we'll configure intentionally to prioritize things like that. But you know, everything's a trade-off. As INFJ, ENTP, we suffer a lot less of the FI troubles that FI people do. But we also experience a lot less of the richness of life that FI people experience. Rachel and I had a really FI moment in the car yesterday when we were driving along. And we were listening to Rubber Soul. And there are places I remember in my life, though some have changed. And it's like the moment right now for us, we're moving away from LA, the song was incredibly on point for me and Rachel. And I said, this is our song. For years, we've never had our song before, right? And it was very emotional. It made me cry. A very rich personal experience, particularist experience. And then after it passed, I felt faintly embarrassed because I'm FI polar and FE third, and mushy emotions are gay, you know. Ultimate Disciple, is not surprising that I and people around here know you better than your friends and family. How sad and funny is that? It's what makes the internet so great, because I spent so many years of my life being in almost nothing but sensors and feeling like there's something wrong with me. There's got to be something wrong with me because I am not like any of these people at all, and they don't seem to like me very much. They don't want to listen to what I have to say, and I don't know what's wrong with me. And then when I was like 30-something was the first time I ever actually heard of MBTI, remarkably. It took me until my early 30s to hear about MBTI. And I said, I read the type description of ENTP. I read all the type descriptions. I immediately knew when I read ENTP that I was an ENTP. I said, oh, I'm that one for sure. And I burst into tears. I was like, now I know what's wrong with me. Defund the censors. But then the thing is, even once I read about MBTI in my early 30s, there wasn't anything then on the internet about cognitive functions, or at least I didn't find anything about it then. So I only spent a couple of weeks being in the intellectual scope, and then didn't think about it much again until I rediscovered it with cognitive functions about 10 years later. Once cognitive functions came into play, then I had an explanation I could start working with and do something with, rather than just what appeared to be an accurate description of me. An accurate description of me is fine, but it's not useful as an explanation. And I'm much more into having explanations that have utility, being correctly described, That's why socionics, what it does best is describe intertype relations, because it doesn't require any explanation. All you have to do is observe how two types engage with one another and describe their interaction styles. And you don't have to be right about the mechanics of cognitive functions to be right about accurately describing intertype relations. Okay. And the reason I'm going to leave now is because it's after 8 a.m. and I have to go buy a new laptop. We've got a lot of stuff to do today. In fact, I've got to go to the vet and get cat tranquilizers for the. I want to tranquilize my cats so that we don't have to endure their plaintive meows for 5 hours. Anyway, because, talk about torture. And these cats are yelling at me from their cages in the back seat. I am just going to be a broken man by the time I get to Mariposa. I am such a slave to those cats. There's no doubt who's in charge of Rachel and my household. It's definitely the cats. So, as I said to her, maybe on the stream the other day too, people may be able to accuse Rachel and I of a lot of things. I don't know, whatever. But one thing nobody could possibly accuse us of is not loving our cats enough. We will go to extraordinary lengths to keep our cats comfortable. No, I don't like tranquilizers. I don't like downers, really. I'll take a Klonopin if I want to go to sleep or something. Half Klonopin. And even then, it doesn't really work that well on me. Benzos don't work very well on me. Yeah, we have two. And then this stray cat Trouble took over our family. He conquered us. He tried to chase him away, but he was too powerful. He was an ENFJ. And he was so powerful that Rachel went from hating him to loving him more than I've ever seen her love anything. That's the power of the ENFJ cat. Yeah, maybe the vet will prescribe ketamine. I'm not sure what they prescribe for cats, but I know they have drugs they prescribe for cats and dogs for like 4th of July. Yeah, when the fireworks go off. I'm just going to go to the vet and say, whatever you prescribe for that, or I'll just tell them the situation. I need my cats to be basically out for about 5 hours. Whatever the vet prescribes, that's what we'll give them, Mac Daddy is in the house. And, worst of all, she's taken a giant dump in the middle of a recently staged bed. We just had this house staged, and that fake bed with its beautiful linen on it, you have now soiled with a massive dump. Outside you go, lady. You're going to have to go outside. I will apologize to you because you're an ENFJ cat. But even ENFJ cat cannot shit on the bed and stay inside the house. I'm sorry, Mac Daddy. I'm terribly sorry for kicking you out of the house for shitting on my bed. But see, here's the thing about ENFJ cat. He's smart. He doesn't shit on the bed we're sleeping in. He's not Amber Heard, you know. He shits on that bed over there to express his displeasure, and also to express his displeasure with the fact that we seem to, us, me and Rachel, to go to the bathroom in the house, and that it's okay for us to also think that he should have to go outside to go to the bathroom. He's deeply offended by this, obviously, because we're not being team players and we're not being fair. But that's because he doesn't understand that he's a cat. And that I don't care how much I love my cats, they cannot shit in the house. That's it. My ISTJ cat, Capillo, is super independent. Like, you're forgiven, Mac Daddy. I cleaned it up already. The covers are in the washing machine, and I put it in the toilet. And I will say, your massive dump did clog the toilet, but I was able to successfully plunge it. All right. You got ENFJ vibes from Amber Heard. She might be an ENFJ. I took like freaking barely a quarter of Klonopin, as you put it recently. Yeah, well, I mean, this is the thing about Klonopin. I like Klonopin because it does help me sleep better. But I don't try to take it during the daytime unless I'm too thwacked out, you know. If I've taken too much speed, is the case that speed and Klonopin go well together. Get yourself all super thwacked out, and then take half a Klonopin, take the edge off. You're golden. The great thing about Amber Heard, her life, anytime she says her name, or anytime anybody else says her name, everybody's gonna think, oh, the bed shitter. Which she totally deserves because she's such a cunt. Well, you can't drink coffee. You gotta get actual speed, CJ. You could get, you know, Adderall, meth, but you know, then you'll appreciate Klonopin. All right, because else of meth, and you're feeling ultra gacked out. Take a full Clonny. You'll just be feeling like king of the world. Even better, do a bunch of hot rails of meth, take a full Clonny, and eat a half ounce of mushrooms. That sounds like a hell of a good day. Yeah, it does. That sounds like my kind of day. SE Downs are qualified to shit where they want. They have special shitting privileges. Okay, I got to split because I got a lot of shit to do today. And now that Staples is open, I'm going to go get a laptop. Since mine just completely broke, it just died. It's like it doesn't even turn on at all. So, what type is Klaus Schwab? He's a German. All right, have a good day. Love you all. Don't forget to eat plenty of cheese. And if you do, eat twice as much next time. I'll probably be live streaming again later. I just have to go get a new laptop because I don't like live streaming on my phone.